Jesus said to his disciples, "Truly I say to you, only with great difficulty will a rich person enter the kingdom of heaven. Again, I tell you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven." Now, Jesus isn't a commie. A lot of it's called liberation theology. It's basically just Marxism. They like to condemn wealth. And they use these different verses to condemn any, like capitalism, any kind of accrue of wealth. But wealth's not the issue. The issue isn't if you possess money. The issue is if money possesses you. Just mentioned Abraham a couple minutes ago. God blessed him abundantly. He blessed many of his followers abundantly. We all know the quote from the Bible that money is the root of all evil. Fortunately, that's not in the Bible. That's not the actual quote. The actual quote is, "For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil." So that slight variation of adding a couple words changes the meaning profoundly. That's an important distinction. It's taken from 1 Timothy 6, so let's put it back in its context. It says, "But godliness with contentment is great gain. We brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. But if we have food and clothing, with these we will be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs." When the disciples heard this, they were greatly astonished, saying, "Who then can be saved?" But Jesus looked at them and said, "With man, this is impossible. But with God, all things are possible." So here we have the gospel. Jesus is not antinomian. He doesn't tell us to ignore the law. To the contrary, he warns us in Matthew 5:8, "You therefore must be perfect, as your heavenly Father is perfect." And because he loves us, he then tells us how to be perfect. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. Honor your father and mother. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. I think most of us know we're in trouble just from that list alone. I know I am. But if there's anyone here who, like the rich young ruler, thinks you've been perfect in all of that, he then tells you, if you would be perfect, go and sell what you possess, give it to the poor, you shall have treasure in heaven. Come, follow me. Jesus knows this is impossible with me. So he, God in the flesh, he had to get it done for us. He took on human flesh to pay the penalty for these things that we violate. He bore every sin of ours, every violation of the law, anything we've ever done and ever will do on the cross. He was brutalized so that you could achieve the impossible. He became sin for us so that when God looks upon us, he sees only the perfection of his Son. With man, this is impossible. But with God, all things are possible. Now, Jesus knows it's impossible for us to be perfect in following his law. So he doesn't say forget about it. Instead, he makes a covenant with us. He says, "This is the covenant that I will make with them after those days, declares the Lord. I will put my laws on their hearts and write them in their minds, because with man, this is impossible. But with God, all things are possible." And I know that none of us are brave enough to let go of our many possessions just for an invisible promise of a kingdom that's to come. With man, this is impossible. But with God, all things are possible. So replace our hearts of stone, give us hearts of flesh, and give us that courage we need so that we can follow, whether it be to a promised land or whether it be to our own cross. With man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible.